Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have something quite interesting to take a look at. Yes, we've got ourselves another new Hiya Toys release. However, this one's not quite as exciting as some of the others, and there's a kind of a funny story to go with this. Well, it's not really even that funny. It's just negligence on my part. So when I first acquired my King of the Monsters Hiya Toys Godzilla, I was so blown away by the figure. I really was beyond impressed with how nice the quality was. I really only was used to NECA when it comes to this type of Godzilla because I never had really acquired any of like the SH Monster Arts outside of a Kong figure, and I was very unfamiliar with Hiya as a whole, but I had heard a lot of people rave about how good their figures were. So when I got that King of the Monsters Godzilla, I was super excited about it, and I went and placed a ton of pre-orders for all the other Hiya Toys Godzillas that I could find on Big Bad Toy Store, one of which, as time went on, when this one went up for pre-order, I pre-ordered as well. This is the Godzilla vs. Kong Exquisite Basic updated version of the Godzilla. Again, the very first figure I think that they had released was the Godzilla vs. Kong Godzilla, and that one was actually really hard to get a hold of, and they've since become a lot better when it comes to actually releasing their figures, but also they've updated a few things on this one. Now, I don't have the original release to compare with it, and I don't even know exactly what the updates were, but I do know that this is the updated version. Now, I did pre-order this, but I didn't realize at the time that it was exactly the same Godzilla figure as the King of the Monsters version, just a slightly different repaint. And I've actually gone online and kind of researched it a little bit to see if that is exactly the case. But unfortunately, I had forgotten about this pre-order completely, and then the pre-order on Big Bad Toy Store went through, so I never really researched it before the pre-order went through, which, you know, caused me to end up getting the figure, even though I probably should have canceled it, because had I realized it was just a straight-up repaint, I probably would have canceled it and just stuck with my King of the Monsters version, because the King of the Monsters version is fantastic. But we have it here, so, I mean, I might as well get a review up for it and see how different it is from the King of the Monsters version. And you can see, again, Godzilla vs. Kong up there on the top. You can also see some images, or you could if my camera was up that high. There you go. You can see the images of Godzilla and Kong fighting right there, and of course, again, you can see the image of the figure right here on the front. If we turn it to the side, you can see the Godzilla vs. Kong logo again. Another image here on the side of the figure. If we turn it all the way around, same thing pretty much, but just a different image of Godzilla. And then we have some information here on the back as far as the figure goes, like the creation, the company, and everything like that. So I am pretty excited to get this out of the box, even if it is just a straight up repaint. I'm intrigued to see how different it is from the other version here. So let's pop it out of the box and check it out. So here is our Godzilla vs. Kong Godzilla. Again, the updated version from Hiya Toys. And again, at first glance, it really does look like it absolutely is the exact same sculpt. Again, I've gone ahead and, just went online, researched it a little bit to make sure that it was the same sculpt. And unfortunately, it is, which isn't a bad thing, I guess, if you don't have the, King of the Monsters version. It is an amazing sculpt. It really is. But the fact that I already have that figure means that it's kind of pointless to have a second one with a repaint that is so similar. However, I will say, straight out of the gate, I can notice differences between this one and the King of the Monsters version, which may or may not be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know how I perceive it quite yet, because the one thing that really sold me on the King of the Monsters version was the very nice brown wash that was applied to the figure. This one doesn't seem to have that, or at least not that I can notice straight off the bat. But it does still look like a really nice looking version of the Godzilla, so let's go ahead and jump to a closer look and we'll check it out from there. So since this is just a repaint, basically, we don't need to go over the sculpt at all, because we've already done that in depth with the original, King of the Monsters version review. We only really need to take a look at what is different as far as the paint apps go, and you can see they have done a good job of highlighting a lot of the detail here in the face. Like, it really pops and shows off how incredible the sculpt of this Godzilla is. We do have some very dark gray tones almost bordering on a black, but I would still say that they're more of like a dark gray, and they've dry brushed out a lot of the detail with a lighter gray. It's not a super light gray, but I feel like it's pretty much a perfect gray that they've used to highlight the detail and of course make it look like it does in the film. But one thing I am noticing though, first of all, of course you have an articulated jaw and an articulated tongue, but it doesn't look like the teeth actually have any paint on them. And now I don't know if they've kind of been dry brushed over with the same gray there that we have on the face, and that was their attempt at painting the teeth, but it was a little more obvious on the King of the Monsters version that it actually had painted teeth. I can kind of see it there, but I feel like whatever they were going for, they should have used a different tone of color to bring the detail of the teeth out a little bit better and just paint them a little bit better, because it almost has an unpainted look because of the way that they've painted them. We can see the inside of the mouth does sport a nice dark purplish tone, also has a bit of a satin shine to it, which you would like to see a nice gloss coat because you would want to see, a wet look for the inside of the mouth. We can see the eyes look like they're painted pretty decently. They as well have a nice gloss coat to them, but I think the eyes of the King of the Monsters version just kind of stood out a little more to me. I'm not sure why. I just feel like I could see the pupil a little better on the King of the Monsters version. But that being said, again, the head sculpt there looks absolutely phenomenal on this Godzilla, and the paintwork that they have applied for the most part does look really nice. And as you continue to move through the course of the body, I do see more of that dry brushing as we move through, but I also see different variations of color applied. Like, looks like maybe we have on top of the grays and stuff, we have browns, and kind of looks like we have very dark kind of marshy like greens, almost kind of giving it the look of like having like moss or something kind of growing on Godzilla, like he's been in the water for just way too long, been stagnant in the water for way too long, and he's now kind of growing moss on him a little bit. That's sort of what it looks like to me. And if you look here at the underside, man, that is just, first of all, the neck joints are a little bit jumbled, but that is just unreal when it comes to the sculpting aspect. Like, the fine detail of this Godzilla from Hiya Toys is seriously on another level. That is just unbelievable sculpting right there. But the paintwork also, again, does look really nice. You can see quite a bit of variation of color here, as I was saying, with the different browns and even the very dark greens here in the stomach and chest region. But I feel like they've applied quite a few different variations of color where they're fairly similar as far as like the tones, so they don't stand out as much, and you can't really notice it, I think, unless you're checking it out in a very nice light and you really iron out how good the actual paint apps are on this. You can see the same thing as you move down the arms. Again, we have that kind of like very interesting greenish tones applied. You can kind of see it right there in the hand. Don't know if we have actual nail paint. Doesn't look like we do. It looks like the paint or the color of the nails is basically just the same color as the rest of the body. I will say I do notice some variation of color up here in the spines of Godzilla. There's definitely a lighter tone that's been dry brushed over quite a few areas of the spines, kind of almost giving it like a slight bluish tint to it, like a very slight bluish tint, which is actually pretty cool. I definitely like that as well. Again, here's one area where you can really see that kind of like it's almost like a mixture of a green and a brown together. You can really see it shining right there. That's definitely one area where it pops significantly. But I do see that through the entire figure. You can even see it leading down through the course of the legs and everything. And then as you move down into the foot, you can see that there definitely isn't any significant paintwork for the nails. Nothing that differentiates the nails from the rest of the body. And one thing that on the King of the Monsters version, I felt like that brown wash they applied, which I don't see on this figure, absolutely helped to highlight the nails and make them look a little bit different. Unfortunately, that isn't the case with this one because the nails are just basically like one flat, solid color with no extra paint added to it. So it's not really that great in that area. And as you continue to move down through the course of the Godzilla, again, it looks just as it did through pretty much the entire body. Again, we've got the mixtures of the browns and the dark grays. And actually, if we get nice and close there, kind of looks like we do have a little bit of that brown wash applied to the figure. I can kind of see it popping up very subtle, like in certain areas. And okay, so yeah, they definitely did apply it because we could see it right here on the underside of Godzilla, kind of creeping through some of the cracks and crevices of his skin texture. Again, more of the dry brushing as well, but it's just not near as obvious as it was on the King of the Monsters version. And of course, we're going to see pretty much the same thing over on the opposing side, so nothing really too impressive or different on this side compared to the initial side. I would say it's just as impressive as the initial side. So even though I kind of feel like I prefer the King of the Monsters version, this is still an absolutely amazing looking Godzilla figure. I don't really think I need to go over the articulation or anything on this one either, because if you have seen my King of the Monsters review, it's the same figure again, so the articulation is going to be the same. But again, the paint job of this one, oh, you could definitely see that kind of bluish tint to it right here on the spines. And the paint job, again, even though it's not the most amazing thing, it's not the most different paint job from the other one, it is still really, really nicely done. And if we bring the King of the Monsters version up and kind of put the two together, you can see how similar they actually look, but you'll also notice again how that brown wash really, really pops on the King of the Monsters version, whereas it doesn't do that on this version. So they absolutely have given it a bit of a different look when it comes to the paint apps. And another thing that you don't see actually on the King of the Monsters version, up in the spines, you don't see that kind of slight bluish tint. So there are definitely some very significant differences. And when you do see the two next to each other in person, you can very easily take notice to that. It does look, quite a bit different when it comes to the paint application. Sculpt-wise, it definitely looks the same outside of the fact that this spine right here is warped on mine. I don't know if that happened in transit, I don't remember, but that is definitely warped, whereas this one is nice and crisp. But the paint apps are extremely nicely done on both. I think, again, I'm a little bit partial to the King of the Monsters version, but this version does still look really, really well done. And again, you can see the Godzillas here, both of them. The King of the Monsters version is the one further there into the back, and then we also have the Godzilla vs. Kong version here in the front. Again, it's actually quite intriguing to see the two together next to each other and to see how similar they are, but how different they are. Sculpt-wise, they're exactly the same, but I mean paint-wise, it's very interesting. But since we already have reviewed the original King of the Monsters sculpt here on the channel, we don't really need to go over the articulation, we don't really need to do sizes, anything like that, because we've already done that in the King of the Monsters review. It's just beating a dead horse, as they say, if I were to do that. So if you haven't seen any of that stuff and you are intrigued by that, I would definitely check out my King of the Monsters Godzilla review, which I will include a link to at the end of the video. But again, this figure is definitely another really nice release from Hiya Toys, and if you didn't get the King of the Monsters version, or if you did get the original Godzilla vs. Kong version and you wanted that updated version, I would definitely say grab it, because it is an absolutely incredible Godzilla figure. Yet again, Hiya Toys has done a fantastic job of supplying us with an amazingly highly detailed sculpt. It's probably the best looking Godzilla figure I have ever seen in my entire life when it comes to fine detail. One of the reasons I'm so desperate to see Hiya Toys start making older Godzillas and older Godzilla monsters and stuff, not just sticking with the legendary line. I wish they'd, get out of that and give us more classic Godzilla stuff at some point. But it is, again, still one of the absolute most impressive Godzilla sculpts I have ever seen. And the paint job on this one, although, as I said, I don't know that I like it quite as much as the King of the Monsters paint job, it is still really well done. And my like for the King of the Monsters version is just ever so slightly higher. I think thanks to the brown wash that's applied to it, just making it look a bit more like I recall it on screen. But the paint job of this is very nicely done. They've done a lot of really nice dry brushing, added quite a bit of variation of color, and there are washes applied to it, but they're more of like greenish brown washes. They're not quite the same, but we do have some of those lighter brown washes appearing on this as well. So you can really just see that a lot went into the paint job of this Godzilla. Even, if you take a step back and just look at it with like a quick glance, it doesn't look like there's that much paint application on it. But once you pull it up into a nice light and you can really let that light shine out the paint job, you'll see just how much was actually put into this. And I also do like the highlighting of the spines on the back of Godzilla with that lighter tone. That does look really quite nice as well. The only thing I think that could have improved this would have been better painted teeth, you know, with a coloration that made them stand out a little more. The eyes are just not quite as nice as the King of the Monsters version, but they're not too far off. But the nails, I feel like they should have applied some sort of a wash to highlight the detail of the nails. You know, Godzilla walking around, he's going to have really dirty feet, so he should have had some kind of, you know, light brown wash or something in the cracks and crevices of his nails to highlight them. But those are just very minor nitpicks. The Godzilla still seems absolutely incredible when it comes to the articulation and everything, just like the King of the Monsters version did. So if you are interested in grabbing this for yourself, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on Big Bad Toy Store, because that is where I purchased mine. So make sure you check that link. Go grab this absolutely incredible release, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.